In this episode, we'll explore whether the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has an important role to play in the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On February 4, 2022, Vladimir Putin went to Beijing to attend the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. 20 days after his return, on February 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine, resulting in the Russia-Ukraine War. On September 21, 2023, Syrian President Assad went to Hangzhou to attend the opening ceremony of the Asian Games. 16 days after he returned, Hamas assaulted Israel by sea, land, and air. Are these just coincidences? The Hamas attack on Israel happened so suddenly and unexpectedly that it raised a lot of suspicions. For example, one wonders how Hamas succeeded in launching such an effective attack when it's actually incapable of waging such a war. Secondly, since it's incapable itself, who provided support and facilitated this war? Who would profit from it? First, let's briefly review the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In fact, the word conflict may no longer be accurate. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said on October 7th that Israel was in a state of war.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון. הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע מותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
Early on October 7th, warning sirens sounded for rocket attacks in the southern region surrounding Gaza and the greater Tel Aviv area, followed by a barrage of rockets fired by Hamas, allowing their militants to cross the border. Explosions could be heard in cities around Tel Aviv and in cities outside Jerusalem. Hamas said it fired 5,000 rockets into Israel in the first 20 minutes, while the Israel Defense Forces put the number at 2,200. They did not disclose how many rockets were intercepted. Things became tense in the moments that followed, when a bulldozer could be seen breaking through the fence between Israel and Gaza, and people chanted slogans and jumped over the fence. And Palestinian militants drove on empty streets inside Israel.
At around 6 in the morning, a rocket fell here near the house, and because of that everything burnt, the house was destroyed, the windows and walls. We heard a massive shock. The child was startled. I don't know, we live in a reality that's unreal.
At the United Nations, the Palestinian and Israeli representatives exchanged tit-for-tat remarks.
Its policies are an assault on our humanity, on international law, on peace, and are a threat for its own people. Can those supporting Israel ignore its colonialist and racist agenda? That would be self-defeating.
What we are witnessing are war crimes, blatant barbaric war crimes, slaughtering civilians, abusing hostages, taking babies from their mothers. There are no words to describe such savagery. This is Israel's 9/11. This is Israel's 9/11, and Israel will do everything to bring our sons and daughters back home.
Following the incident, a number of world leaders condemned the Hamas attack, fearing that the fighting could turn into a major regional conflict. The White House announced that senior national security officials had briefed President Joe Biden, and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken had issued a statement condemning the Hamas attack on Israel, saying that the U.S. would remain in close contact with our Israeli partners.
Good afternoon. Today, the people of Israel are under attack, orchestrated by a terrorist organization, Hamas. In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back.
It also signifies that the world is beginning to take a stand on the matter. Traditionally, the U.S. has always been in support of Israel, and Russia has always been against the U.S. For many decades, the United Nations' decision to create a Palestinian state has been sabotaged, primarily by the U.S., which wants to monopolize and usurp mediation efforts and is trying to sideline Russia, the UN, and the European Union, and in doing so disrupt the work of the quartet of international mediators, which includes all these parties: Russia, the U.S., the UN, and the European Union. On the matter of taking a stance, China is not taking a stance in favor of either Israel or Hamas.
China is closely following the recent escalation of the conflict between Palestine and Israel. We are deeply saddened by the civilian casualties caused by the conflict and oppose and condemn the facts that harm civilians. China also opposes acts widening the conflict and undermining regional stability and hopes to see an early ceasefire and restoration of peace. The international community should play an effective role and make a concerted effort to de-escalate the situation.
What appears to be fair in this statement is in fact taking sides. It's because when viewed in the context of the timing of October 9th, it means that after allowing Hamas to kick off the brutal killings, the CCP wants Israel, which possesses great national power, to cease fire. The CCP has always been good at the art of sophistry, including avoiding Hamas in its speech and replacing it with Palestine. This is because the international reference to Hamas is usually to terrorists and, to a lesser extent, to the Palestinian militant organizations. If the term Hamas is used, then it implies support for terrorist organizations. The power of the internet has opened the world's eyes to the horrors of Hamas. Hamas has entered Israeli neighborhoods and massacred at least 1,200 people, including babies, and abducted dozens more. Because of YouTube rules, we will not show it here. Naturally, Israel is unhappy with the CCP's stance. On October 13th, the Israeli Foreign Ministry said in a statement, "The ambassador expressed Israel's deep disappointment with Chinese announcements and statements about the recent events in the south, where there was no clear and unequivocal condemnation of the terrible massacre committed by the terrorist organization Hamas against innocent civilians and the abduction of dozens of them to Gaza." We observe that Israeli diplomats have a naive perception of the CCP. For many years, China has been regarded as Israel's friend, and Israel has provided China with a great deal of high technology, especially advanced defense technology. The two countries maintain close economic and trade ties. China is now Israel's third largest trading partner, with bilateral trade totaling US $24.45 billion in 2022. This naivete may be based on a certain sense of gratitude. Between 1937 and 1940, during World War II, nearly 30,000 Jewish refugees fled to China. The vast majority arrived in Shanghai, where they were welcomed by the city. Most of the Jewish refugees in Shanghai survived the subsequent invasion of Japan, Germany's ally. This remarkable feat has been called the Shanghai Miracle by some historians. Israelis may not be fully aware that the CCP isn't China. During World War II, it was the Republic of China, ROC diplomats, who helped Israelis flee to China, and it was ordinary Chinese who showed kindness to the Israelis who fled to China. Yet, it's the CCP under a mask of hypocrisy who has been harming countless Chinese people for decades. The CCP has a long history of association with Hamas, and evidence of its covert support for Hamas has been coming to light. For example, in 2018, NBC reported that Israel discovered that Hamas had fired an M302 rocket designed by the CCP and made in Syria. This M302 rocket was used by Hamas to attack a coastal city 30 miles north of Tel Aviv and 70 miles from the Gaza Strip in July 2018. At the same time, it resembled a batch of rockets intercepted by Israel at sea in March of the same year. The M302 rockets are made by the Syrian military and are based on the Weishi-2 rockets made by the Sichuan Aerospace Industry General Corporation of China. Let's take a look at the tunnels. South Korean media, the Chosun Ilbo, made it clear that North Korean technology was used in the tunnels used by Hamas to infiltrate Israel. The article says, after Israel built a wall 6 to 8 meters high around the Gaza area, Hamas introduced North Korean technology to build tunnels to circumvent the wall. Hamas has dug a number of tunnels leading to the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt and the desert areas of southern Israel and has been engaged in a game of moles with the Israeli army. The Hamas tunnels, in which a grown man can move around with his head slightly bowed, are fully stocked and can be used for months at a time. In addition, there are tunnels for transporting weapons and necessities. Israeli sources have also reported similar occurrences, stating that in 2014, Hezbollah signed a $13 million contract with North Korea to bring in materials and excavation technology. This allowed Hamas to smuggle weapons and terrorists under Israel's nose. North Korea was taught this technology by the CCP. According to the mainstream media in China, North Korea discovered the massive construction of underground fortifications by the Chinese army as early as when the Chinese army was still fighting the US and helping North Korea. When the Chinese army completely withdrew from North Korea, we taught our North Korean comrades the technology and know-how of digging military tunnels without holding anything back. In this article, it stated that North Korea started digging tunnels towards South Korea in an attempt to liberate South Korea after acquiring this technology. Yes, South Korea needs to be very careful nowadays. On the other hand, Israel transfers high technology to the CCP, overlooking the consequences. For example, on October 2, 2023, the Chinese media published an article titled, China, which started by importing Israeli drones, has successfully defeated the teacher and won a number of large orders from the Middle East. The article said that Israel has released a number of military drones, some of which are among the world's leading models. The Chinese military has also imported Israeli drones and missiles. On the basis of the imitation, China launched the E-Long series, which exceeded Israeli drones in terms of ammunition capacity, operational range, and precision strike capability, and was therefore able to cut off the buyer from Israel. In this war, Hamas sent drones to destroy the communication and surveillance equipment of the border wall beforehand, preventing the Israeli army from using cameras to monitor the situation from a distance. The drones also destroyed the remote-controlled machine guns on the Israeli border fortifications, leaving the Israeli army with no tools to counter the ground attack. The drones and rockets used by Hamas to attack Israel are ostensibly from Iran, but it should be the Chinese Communist Party that actually has this kind of military and financial strength and intent. Now, under the propaganda of the CCP, many Chinese people have been cheering for Hamas and opposing Israel on the internet. Israel hasn't received much friendly support from the Chinese. The Chinese people are victims too. According to the Israel-Chinese Chamber of Commerce, at least 3 Chinese have been shot, and 4 others are still out of contact. As flights back to China have been cancelled, the Chinese have called the Chinese embassy, which told them to figure out what to do on their own. An outdoor music festival in southern Israel was targeted by Hamas forces on October 7th, resulting in at least 260 fatalities so far. A video of Noah, a 25-year-old mixed-race Chinese-Israeli girl who was taken by Hamas at the music festival, has been widely circulated on social media platforms. The Chinese media published a plea for help from the girl's parents to the Chinese government, and on China's Weibo, a social media platform, some Chinese netizens, long brainwashed by the CCP party culture, have left appalling comments. The vast majority of the comments read, "She's not a Chinese national, she's probably not even considered an ethnic Chinese. A mixed-race Chinese-Israeli, she isn't a Chinese national. If she can join the Israeli Defense Forces, she's an Israeli national, so what does that have to do with China? Why don't you go and interview the mothers and fathers of the children who died at the hands of Israel? They want to speak out too. She also has German blood, don't forget that. This music festival is simply a provocation. They deserve to be bashed." With such brainwashing propaganda, the following incident is not surprising. On October 13th, a staff member of the Israeli embassy in China was assaulted on the streets of Beijing. Video obtained by Reuters shows the staff member being assaulted by a man in white with a knife. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the attack didn't happen within the embassy compound itself, but in the embassy district in Beijing, which is usually heavily guarded by police. The injured man was taken to hospital for treatment and is in stable condition. In the face of Hamas's atrocities, Israel has launched a ferocious counterattack. On October 13th, Israel ordered more than 1 million people to leave the northern half of the Gaza Strip within 24 hours. Some Gaza residents are abandoning their homes to escape Israel's attacks. Hamas, for its part, told them not to leave. Later, Israeli infantry and tanks raided the Gaza Strip. Everyone knows that Hamas is no match for Israel's military might. So why would Hamas launch a raid with such a disparity of power? Who could pay Hamas enough money or give it enough incentive to orchestrate such an operation? On the other hand, the terrorists, confined to a narrow area of 40 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide and under the close surveillance of the world's strongest Israeli Mossad intelligence and security agency, were able to launch 5,000 rounds of rockets and missiles and hundreds of paragliders, and to carry out a successful large-scale attack. Such an operation is impossible without powerful backers behind the scenes. Who exactly are they? Let's have a guess. The escalating Palestinian-Israeli conflict will most directly alleviate the pressure on Russia. But Russia, which is in deep trouble and in decline, should not have much economic power to stage a major event. Many media outlets believe that the main source of funding for Hamas is Iran, which in fact has been under Western blockade for a long time and isn't that well off. The most important thing is that if this sudden war turns into a long-term war involving many countries, the CCP's gains will be incomparable. First, as a third party, the CCP could potentially replace the weakened US as the facilitator of Israeli-Saudi diplomatic relations. Second, this conflict is the most accurate way to test the strength of the US's response to a potential CCP attack on Taiwan. Even if the US will still send troops, it will mean the US has to fight at multiple points around the world, and its combat force may be spread thin. Hamas launched 5,000 missiles to severely damage Israel. Its surprise attack tactics of saturation attack really surprised countries around the world and also revealed the limitations of the air defense system. So in a future Taiwan Strait war, can Taiwan withstand such a saturation attack? Wasn't this a very good drill? In this Israeli-Palestinian war, the US has made it clear that it supports Israel and has sent its aircraft carrier battle group, the USS Ford, to move closer to the eastern Mediterranean to strengthen regional deterrence. However, sending in troops would spread out the US combat power in multiple locations around the globe while supporting Ukraine. But it would be important to Communist China's plans to invade Taiwan later. By provoking the Middle East region, it would distract American forces. Let the US first send its aircraft carrier battle groups to the Mediterranean. If the People's Liberation Army invades Taiwan, these aircraft carrier battle groups might not be able to come back in time. Third, if the CCP invades Taiwan, there is a high probability that it will be sanctioned or even embargoed by the Western world. If Saudi Arabia and other Arab League countries break up with the US in this Israeli-Arab war, the CCP's influence could replace the US-led reconciliation process in the Middle East. Securing the oil supply is a key factor in the CCP's efforts to sustain the war in Taiwan, and at the same time, the RMB could gain a financial advantage over the US dollar in the major international battleground of the oil trade. While the US-led reconciliation process in the Middle East has gone awry, the CCP has shown its intention to replace it. Its desire to help the peace talks could be seen through another quote from a spokesman of the Chinese Foreign Ministry.
The way out of the recurrence of the Palestine-Israel conflict lies in resuming peace talks, implementing the two-state solution, and promoting a comprehensive and proper settlement of the Palestinian question through political means at an early date, so that the legitimate concerns of all parties can be guaranteed. China will continue to work relentlessly to that end with the international community.
Going back to the beginning, on September 21, 2023, China sent a plane to pick up Syrian President Assad to attend the opening ceremony of the Asian Games in Hangzhou. The CCP authorities even arranged for him to visit the Lingyan Temple, a 1,000-year-old temple, and had it receive him by breaking the special rule of not opening the main door. Why was Assad received by the CCP in such a high-profile manner? For more than 2 decades since its establishment, the highest authority of Hamas has been located in Syria, which changed only in 2011. Compared to countries like Qatar and Turkey, Syria is the only country that really dares to go out of its way to accept the leadership of Hamas and confront the international community. In other words, in the long run, Syria is the best place for the Hamas command. However, we have always said that the good luck of the CCP seems to have run out in the last few years. This time, facing the long and complicated Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the CCP doesn't have the necessary experience or professional knowledge to handle the situation. In the end, it is feared that the situation might turn out to be a blunder.